So, ladies and gentlemen, it is currently the 30th of July. It is, if I'm remembering correctly, I don't know if July this year has a 30th. Okay, it does have a 31st. So, second to last day of July 2022. We're getting closer to getting away from summer, which for me, it's like that's always a nice turning point for the year, just getting away from the muggy weather and my first summer here in Tennessee. But welcome to episode 24 of the Anatomy Podcast. Today, we are going to be sitting down and talking with Chris Whited of Bodysnatcher, primarily, to 1776 recordings, and if he would like to share about it, King Conquer or whatever, the band you used to be a part of. There you go, exactly. And we will be basically taking a good hour or so out of Chris's day, in which I am really excited to be having him on and piecing together what will be the Bodysnatcher lineup. Because I've known about Chris for a long time. I'm more than aware of his work, his contributions to the scene, and apparently through 1776 recordings, his mixing and mastering for multiple iconic records. Some of them I even have here in my home on CD. So for those of you who are not familiar with the formula of the Anatomy Podcast, we have the first half, which is for the people, the second half, which is for the music, and the musical contributions that the people on the podcast and in session have contributed to. And with this session, it's going to be pretty direct, pretty straightforward, what we're going to be talking about for the most of it. But Mr. Chris, how are you doing today?
Doing great, dude.
Good. And I'm, again, so incredibly honored and excited to be having someone like Chris on the podcast, with contributions in the scene being as the drummer and backing vocalist per se, because it's you, it's Kyle Medina, and then there's Kyle Carter, in which all of you guys contribute vocals in Bodysnatcher, now upon at least 2 different records. And I mean, obviously, you also have your band King Conquer from back in the day, and 1776 recordings, which among other records, they have, and therefore Chris has helped out with Traitors and their most recent album, Repent. There is the latest I Declare War record, in which if we go on,
I didn't do the newest I Declare War.
Oh no, okay.
I don't know who did that.
False. I think I was confusing the two.
I did a single for Falsifier.
Okay.
I've worked with bands like Strangled. I've done Orphan, yes. The new Orphan album that just came out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Let's see. I've done stuff for the Waste album that came out. I did that.
Oh shit. Okay.
2-piece. I did Pieced Up. Dealey Plaza, lots of Dealey Plaza stuff. Annotations of an Autopsy's newest record that they put out.
Shit.
The band Nail Wound. I don't know if you've heard them. They're sick though.
Yes. Yeah.
I did the last Scattershot record, the very last Entombed in the Abyss record that came out a while ago.
Okay.
Stygian Complex, yes. Hounds, lots of stuff. Yeah. So that's one thing to kind of throw in there right off the bat is, all the records that Chris has helped mix and master in the scene for all these amazing bands. Some of them we are more than familiar with, some of them we want to get familiar with. But starting off with the first half of the podcast session, I wanted to go ahead and take a deep dive into Chris's musical background, basically everything that has led him up to this moment in time, being a sound engineer, being a drummer, being a vocalist, all the fun stuff. Basically, wherever you want to start, whether at the very beginning, awkward like high school level legacy and story,
wherever you want to start, you can take it away, but tell us everything there is to know about you as concerning to be a musician.
Cool. Basically, I'm super old compared to most people in our scene. I played my first show in 2002. So yeah, so I was when like Trustkill Records and Eulogy Records and all those record labels were huge. That's when I started going to shows. So my first shows were like old straight edge hardcore bands like Where Fear and Weapons Meet and Until the End, and like a bunch of old hardcore stuff was what I grew up with. And then deathcore wasn't even like a thought at the time. It wasn't even like almost a thing, and then bands like Dead to Fall started coming out, and Dead to Fall was really good at merging a metal sound, but they were hardcore dudes, so all their fans were people that went to hardcore shows, because back in the day, if you were a metal band, it wasn't like what shows are today. It was, there was tons of fights if there was mixed bill shows, because the metal crowd didn't understand, the mosh aspect of the hardcore scene, but when bands like Dead to Fall and Through the Eyes of the Dead and stuff like that started, lots of hardcore kids were going to those shows, and Shattered Realm was big. I mean, Hatebreed was probably the biggest one that really started getting fans from both sides. But yeah, so I played my first show in 2002. I think I was a freshman in high school.
Shit.
And my brother started a band. My brother was 3 years older than me, and he started a band with like a bunch of dudes from this crust punk band called Evil Existence. And in our town, there used to be shows every weekend. We had a skate park that let bands throw hardcore shows, and it was awesome. We had a lot of really big bands at the time come through here, and so because they were in a band with a bunch of crust punk kids, all those kids also liked black metal a lot. But my brother and his friends really liked hardcore a lot, so they kind of they started this band called Dark Skies Have Fallen, and it was like a really weird mix of black metal and hardcore. And this was 2002, and the first few shows were just absolutely insane. And Evil Existence at the time was touring a lot, and so they needed a drummer. My brother's like, yo, you got to learn how to play drums. And I'm like 14, I'm like, all right, I'll learn. So they had this like, DIY recording that they had. And I basically just studied what this dude was doing and just learned how to play drums. And then I literally played a show 2 weeks later.
And I mean, just being thrown right into the mix, I can only assume that you had a pretty good relationship with your older brother, and that you were like, okay, yeah, absolutely, let's play music together.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
That's awesome.
And our whole family is like super musically inclined. Like all my grandparents are chorus instructors and piano instructors, and my mom was all state choir, and you know what I mean? So it's like it's as far as you can go back in our family, there's music there.
Right. 1 second, boss. What's up? I know. Oh, thank you. All right, continue, boss.
But yeah, so like, my brother wanted me to start playing music. I was like, hell yeah. And
yeah,
when you're 14 and there's, everyone else is 17, 18, you're just like, you think it's cool,
right.
You want to do those things. And then like when I went to saw the community that the hardcore scene had, me and my brother grew up in, kind of our family's definitely broken up, so we'll just put it that way.
Right.
And so me and him ran away together when we were young, and so basically anything that he did, I would go and do that. But having that like community there and building friendships that were like stronger than any blood relationship that I'd ever had besides my mom,
Right.
was just this thing that was crazy. And, I had all these friends in school that were, where we're from, there was just a massive opioid epidemic, basically. I don't
Oh
know
shit.
whatever word. I had so many friends overdose on oxys and Percocets and stuff.
Fuck.
Like even in middle school, you know what I mean? So like getting into a scene like the hardcore scene where there's this thing called straight edge, and there's all these kids that are like hanging out and going to parties together, but like nobody's like being insanely irresponsible. Like, of course, there's still irresponsible people,
Right.
but it wasn't like the group of people that I knew when I was really young, So
Yeah.
And then if I ever had a problem with anything, there was always 10 people around that I could reach out to,
Right.
And I'm still friends with all of those people. Every single person that I met when I was younger, going to shows at age 14, I'm still friends with right now.
And that's the coolest thing ever.
So a lot of people never see that. A lot of people never have real authentic friendships. They have friends for a couple of years, something happens and they blow them off, and then you're not friends with them anymore. I've had the same group of friends my entire life, and that's what the hardcore, like that's why the hardcore scene to me is so important, and I hold it so close because a lot of kids that don't know they need that.
No, that's absolutely correct. And I think more than enough times in my life, there have been plenty of friends that I thought I was going to be brothers with for the rest of my life. And then because of their accumulating and just kind of festering arrogance, or just like kind of shitty attitudes towards life and the world and what they want to do in the future, they're like, oh, nothing fucking matters. Do whatever you want. They're like acting as if there are no consequences in life. Well, there are, and they bite you in the ass eventually.
And no matter what, you're going to meet people like that, even in the hardcore scene. You're going to meet tons of people like that. But I got really lucky with the scene that I grew up in, and because it was like that, made me, I've never been able to get out of the hardcore scene because of that. It's just like, but yeah, so I started playing drums in a band. So get back to that.
Yeah, exactly. But
and, I mean, there's still recordings of that band online. Actually, it's crazy.
Really?
That band turned into a band called A Horror Story, and that's when we started touring. And so I started touring when I was either late 16, early 17.
Right.
I was still in high school, and we did like our first tour with this band from Pennsylvania called The Storm. And it was awesome. Back then you could book your own tours. Facebook wasn't a thing yet. MySpace, I think, was just coming out. At first we had a thing called LiveJournal. It was like a social media thing called LiveJournal, and everyone would like post the shows and stuff on there. And I was also in my high school, I got switched to a different high school my senior year. So I was the only kid in this new school that was in TV production 4. So I was basically in with the TV production 3 kids. And so I was allowed to do basically whatever I wanted every week. And so I started making video show flyers, and then my school ended up letting me post the video show flyers every Friday at the end of the day.
No way.
Yeah. So the shows were just insane. So there's all these kids coming out to shows that wouldn't normally come out to shows. And it was just awesome. Every Friday there was a show, every Saturday there was a show, and every show was so awesome.
Right.
But yeah, so we turned into a band called A Horror Story, and it was still my brother and same members as the band before that. We just changed the name, and we started touring my senior year. I did a 30-day tour, and my school gave me C credits for the month that I was gone.
Really?
And then I did another tour, and then I got kicked out of school for missing too many days. But I talked to my mom, and I was like, hey, they said if I go on this next tour, like I'm gonna get kicked out of school. And she was like, honestly, if you know what you want to do for the rest of your life, she's like, what other 17-year-old gets to go tour the country? You know what I mean? So she was actually extremely supportive of it. And that's coming from a family with zero money. Like I'm talking, if I needed $50 to eat food one week, it wasn't a possibility. You know what I mean? Like that was not an option. But she knew that no matter what, I'd figure something out, because I've just always been that type of person where I'd figure shit out, you know, whether I, you know, there was years that I'll get into that. But yeah, so that band toured pretty good amount. And then we put out an EP called Conquer.
Okay.
And we got a new singer. And we were like, oh, well, if we're getting a new singer and we're like kind of changing the way the band sounds a little bit, let's just make a different band name. And so we were going to call the band Conquer. And then our guitar player was just like, oh, we should just call it King Conquer, because it sounds like King Kong, but it kind of like rolls off the tongue, and it still has the same name that we wanted, you know? And so we were like, yeah, fuck it. And King Conquer started. We had one singer for like the first couple songs, and then we were doing like this Florida tour with I think it was like Implosive Disgorgence, and I don't know, it was like bands that are pretty known right now that weren't known at all at the time. But, you know, we were playing shows to like 50-60 people. It was sick, you know, it was badass. And the last day of that tour, we had this fill-in vocalist. And the last day of that tour, this band called I think it was We Shot the Sheriff, I think. And that's great. And the singer of that band was this huge bald dude with the lowest vocals we ever heard in our life. And it was James Mislow, the dude that ended up being King Conquer's vocalist for like the whole time. And I remember I lied straight to his face. I said, hey, dude, like, we got like, there's a couple record labels looking at us right now, and like, you know, we really need a new singer for this new like stuff that we're writing and blah blah blah. And they said we just gotta like record the CD and send it to them, and we'll have a record deal. And he was like, oh shit, really? And I was like, yeah. I was like, just come practice with us a couple of times, because he lived in Miami and we lived in Naples, so it was like a 2-hour drive. And he came over and just practiced and just did random vocals. And, you know, at the time, there wasn't a lot of people doing super low vocals like that. We were like, what the fuck is this? This is so crazy. And we literally recorded a 5-song EP. And me and my brother and our guitar player at the time spent all this time making like this press kit. We had no idea what the fuck we were doing, because like this was 2009. And 2000, it was 2008. I forget. I think it was 2008.
It's still crazy to look back to. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but like to think that back then I was only 8 years old.
Yeah, dude.
I was only 8 and 9 years old. I'm like, what's Guns N' Roses, Ma? Because like,
dude, 2008, I was fucking 20 or something, 19 or something. I'm 34.
Jesus, man. But anyways, you were saying.
So yeah, we recorded this EP with our buddy who now is like one of the biggest guitar reamp guys in the music industry. Like he owns like a really good recording studio. But you know, we're all just friends back in the day. You know, it's just cool seeing how far everybody's come since then.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we recorded this EP. It was called what the fuck was it called? Decomposing Normality. That was the name of the EP that King Conquer put out. And before we put it out on like MySpace and stuff, because MySpace used to just let you upload songs, and it was fucking awesome. And so we spent all this time making this press kit, and we tried to make it as professional as we thought. And we literally overnighted it. There was one record label that we knew we wanted to be on, because there were so many bands that were cool. They had like Burning the Masses and, you know, The Ghost Inside. They had Volume at the time, and
was just a really good record label. We loved all the bands on it. Oh yeah, as Blood Runs Black was on it. It was called Media Scare Records. So we overnighted it. Less than 24 hours later, we got a call back.
Really?
So the lie that I told ended up happening.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy.
And then when we got that, I was like, hey, by the way, we didn't have any of those offers, but
now we do.
But yeah, and ended up working out. We signed a record deal, shitty record deal that we didn't know at the time. We didn't get a lawyer because we were stupid, and we had a really fucked up deal because at the time, you know, CD sales were going down. Nobody knew how to make money off digital streams yet.
Oh, fuck.
You know, from like 2008 to 2014, if you were on a record label, you're fucked. But whatever, it definitely helped get the band name out there. Then King Conquer put out a record in 2010 that did really well, and did a bunch of tours with a lot of awesome bands. We did tours with like Molotov Solution and Suffocate and As Blood Runs Black, Thick as Blood, stuff like that. So we did a ungodly amount of touring in 2011. There was 2 to 3 years where, you know, out of those years I'd be home for 40 or 50 days out of the year, and
then the rest of it were just like endless touring
on tour. And it was really really hard because we did not make any money at all. I have 3 van repos on my name because we would just I just get a van and wouldn't be able to pay it, and we get repoed, and you know, and
that's awful.
But it was crazy. It was it was really really good times. My brother also had multiple sclerosis, so I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like a nerve disease. And so he was a guitar player in the band, the first band that we were in, and then he ended up playing bass because every time he relapsed, he'd have to his brain would have to reteach his fingers how to work correctly.
Shit.
And he ended up playing bass for King Conquer, and you know, he still toured even though he was advised very strongly not to, and you know, he still pushed himself through all that stuff. And yeah, it was pretty rough. But yeah, those were some extremely hard times.
Yes, naturally.
And then in 2013 we had a guitar player, you know, and he was just so negative all the time, and everything with the band was just nothing felt fun. It was just everything sucked. We ended up kicking that guitar player out, and we were a 4-piece for a little while, and that felt good.
Yeah.
And then in between tours, at that point in time, I had moved to a different city, like an hour from everybody else.
Yes.
And I got offered this job in between tours where I was like a stagehand for, there's a cover band that was here, and they were like one of the most popular cover bands in Florida. They had like a bus, their own PA system, their own light guy, their own it was a full crew that traveled with them.
Right.
And so they were paying me in between tours. They would pay me like $200 a night just to help them set up and tear down. And I was like, damn, this is fucking sick. I'd work for 4 hours, make $200, and I'd do that 4 nights a week. It was great money.
Right.
And then our record label, we had our second full length recorded, and it had been a year since we turned the record in. The label still hadn't put it out. I'm like, what the fuck is going on, dude? Like I can't, the songs are old now, you know what I mean?
Right.
Songs feel outdated now. And right before the record came out, we had been home for like 4 months, and you know, I was working all the time, and like for the first time in my life, I was like actually able to support myself, because the 2 years before that, I was literally, all I had to my name was my drums and a suitcase with whatever clothes that I could fit in that suitcase. And I was, you know, basically just being the bum of all my friends. You know, luckily I had good friends, and they would let me sleep on their couches and stuff. But I literally slept on my friends' couches for like 2 to 3 years.
Jesus Christ.
you know, I tried to do little jobs here and there when I could, but being on tour and stuff all the time was like made it impossible. And so during that 4 months, and I was like making all that money, not a bunch of money, but I was able to afford to live. And that band said, hey, we'll pay you this amount of money cash, and we'll pay you, we take August and September off every year, and we'll pay you full paychecks every week for the 2 months that we're off. And it was a good amount of money. And the cover band asked me to play drums for them, and it was like more money than I'd ever, like, you know, even almost made in my life, like compared to my parents and everything, you know what I mean? So I was like, hey, like, I really don't see the band like doing much more than it is. I just got this offer. I can still play music. It's not something that I would like to do really, but the guys are cool and it's really good money, and I can stay in town, you know what I mean? And I play 5 nights a week, you know?
Right.
So they all kind of didn't know what to do. When I did that, James, our singer, was like, well, if Chris isn't in it, I don't want to do it either, you know?
Right.
And so the band never said that we broke up, but just kind of took a hiatus. And so that I did that from like 2013 to like 2016 or something.
Right.
And it was all right. It just like it ate away at my fucking soul. I hated playing other people's songs. It sucked.
Right.
It wasn't for me. It was great money, but it just wasn't for me. And but during that time is when I started picking up recording, and because I was home all the time, you know what I mean? I didn't have to go out and play until 9 p.m. every night. So every day I had all this free time, and so I started learning how to record. And then I ended up starting a studio with one of my friends that filled in for King Conquer. It was a situation where it was one of my best friends and we're no longer friends anymore. But we started a studio and we were fucking crushing it. Like we were doing every band that you could think of. Like we were slaying.
Right.
And we were booked a year in advance every year. And yeah, it was fucking awesome. But during that time is when I met Bodysnatcher, and we did the Death of Me album. And so I was on the songs on the re-release of that with the 5 new songs. But I also recorded the original version of that album before I was in the band. And so that's when I met everybody, you know, and I was like, damn, I was like, this is what I wanted King Conquer to be. I just wanted to be a fucking deathcore band, but I just wanted to be fucking breakdowns and just heavy shit the whole time. I didn't want to fuck around with any of this fucking doodly do fucking like solos and shit. I was like, fuck all that shit. I just want to fucking be heavy, dude. And I was like, so when I was working on that record, I was like, damn, this shit's fucking badass. I like this shit. You know, some of my favorite bands were like, you know, old Acacia Strain and Bury Your Dead and stuff like that. And like, that's what Bodysnatcher reminded me of, like a modern version of that. And so that's when I met them. And then a bunch of shit happened with members of Bodysnatcher, and basically the only member left, there was Kyle Medina and the guitar player Frankie. Well, those were the only 2 members left, and they were like, hey, like we know all this stuff happened, but like we really want to put a song out so people like know that we can still, like, you know, we didn't have to rely on the other people in the band, you know? And I was like, all right, cool. I was like, at the time I was like, I'll write the drums and record the song. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, I don't really have time to be in the band because we're so busy with the studio. And so we did this one song, Exterminate.
Yes.
And that was me, Frankie, and Kyle Medina. And we wrote that song together, didn't put it out. And then they're like, hey, we got this tour. Like, you think you could like fill in for us? And I was like, yeah, I could probably make that happen.
Right.
So I did the tour. I ended up having I told him, I was like, I can only do 2 weeks of the tour. So like we had to fly somebody else out to do the other half of the tour. And I got to fly home because I had an album booked I had to be at home for. I had to record. So we actually flew out the drummer from 2 Piece, Dustin.
Oh, shit.
and this was before Two Piece was a band. And so he flew out and, you know, covered the rest of it. And then they finished that tour. And then I get home from that tour and all this fucking shit happens. I find out some crazy shit about the dude I ran a studio with. He had like all these fucking folders of people on his computer that were not good. So I kicked him out of my house that day. And I literally was like, don't ever talk to me again. I was like, this right here could have ruined my entire fucking life. And like everything that I've worked for, like, because I
just gone.
I booked like every band that we worked with, I booked everything. You know what I mean? So like it was my name, you know, and I just couldn't.
Yeah.
So basically I had to start another studio name and start back from the ground up and build everything else from the ground up. And then after that, Kyle Medina, I mean, I did that one tour and I was like, oh, I'll do it. This is fucking awesome. I'll be in the band, you know? And then, so before that tour, we also had to find a bass player. So I knew King Conqueror had toured with this band Float Face Down years ago.
Yes. Float Face Down.
And so I was like, oh, let's talk to Kyle Shope from Float Face Down. And he was like, oh, fuck, yeah. And so we, and he had just, Kyle Medina had just done vocals for Float Face Down for the memorial show because the Float's singer died. So Medina went and did vocals for Float Face Down at their memorial show, and he had met Kyle Shope. So he was like, hey, what about Kyle Shope? And I was like, I fucking love Kyle Shope. I've toured with him way back in the day. So like, love that dude. And we were looking, when Frankie was in the band, we were still looking for a second guitar player. And I was like, oh, we'll get Kyle Carter, because me and Kyle Carter were in Dealey Plaza together.
Dealey Plaza. Oh, you were in Dealey Plaza too?
Yeah, for a little bit. I basically like, I did one tour. I worked with the band a lot, so I knew all the songs. It was just, you know, it was just, we just played one-off shows. Me and Brian have been good friends for a long time.
Cool.
So yeah, I was like, oh, we'll get Kyle Carter. So Frankie had already like started making videos of him playing the songs so Carter could learn the songs and blah, blah, blah. And then we did this tour, and we had another tour in like 2 weeks. And right when we got home from the first tour, Frankie was like, hey guys, like, I just don't think that I can do this anymore. And I wasn't on the phone call, so I don't know exactly how it went, but I think he was just going through a lot of like family stuff and money issues and stuff like that. And like, I get it. I did the same thing when I was younger, you know? And, so then we had all these tours, but Kyle Carter couldn't tour yet. He was still working full time. He didn't know all the songs yet. And we're like, fuck. So, we had our friend Tyler Roebuck come and start playing guitar on tour for us, and he's still a really good friend of ours, and he's saved our asses for a couple tours. And then once Kyle Carter was able to start touring full time, he did, and we wrote those 5 new songs on the re-release of Death to Me. We actually wrote, recorded, and sent in those songs fully mixed in 4 days.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's dedication right there, man.
So then you know, we started doing all these tours, and right when we put those songs out, I don't know, everything was just, it seemed like, we're like, oh damn, the band's like actually kind of like catching some steam right now, you know? And we were still on Modern Empire Records at the time, or it was Stay Sick at the time.
Yeah.
And then we wrote This Heavy Void. So we were just like, it's basically, we're like a brand new band of members that were like very seasoned members. You know what I mean? Like I was in King Conquer forever. Kyle Shope was in Float Face Down forever. Kyle Carter was in Beacons and Dealey Plaza forever. And if you haven't heard Beacons, go listen to Beacons. A band's fucking heavy.
See, and the thing is, I feel really bad because 90% of the bands that you've mentioned so far in this podcast session, just because I was only introduced to hardcore, deathcore, beatdown, all that stuff, maybe 2013. And like this was Suicide Silence, Whitechapel, Chelsea, all those guys. I didn't know shit about any of these other bands, and like I still haven't actually sat down and listened to Dealey Plaza, listened to King Conquer, listened to Float Face Down, but I've heard those names cycle around enough. I'm like, oh, I heard about these bands when I was first getting into the scene.
Yeah.
And to be talking to one of the people who was like involved and associated with those bands, it's a fucking dream come true. It's full circle, baby. But no, it's
dude,
crazy.
Go listen. When we get off here, listen to Float Face Down. That is the best deathcore band to ever be alive.
Really?
Dude, they're the heaviest band ever. And this was like, that album came out in like 2010, and it's like, you're like, fuck you. It's just like, oh, it's so good. we did a bunch of tours with them. Yeah.
No, that's cool.
Definitely. So yeah, we had all these members that were, you know, we had all toured, we had all written music in the genre.
Right.
And so we started writing This Heavy Void, and we were like, dude, like, let's just write a deathcore record that's, and what is deathcore in our eyes? You know what I mean?
What is deathcore? Yeah.
Because like, to us, deathcore, you know, the core in the name was because of hardcore. You know what I mean? Like, you had to put hardcore parts in it. You know, and there's all these deathcore bands coming out in the recent ages where they're like, they don't put any type of hardcore influence in it. And like, so why are you calling yourself a deathcore band if you have no hardcore influence? You know what I mean? Like, there's so many bands in the genre writing lyrics, you know, that are made up scenarios, that are, you know, talking about monsters or goblins or you know, when a big side of the hardcore aspect in deathcore lyrics was writing stuff that had emotional value, or that, you know, writing lyrics that helped you get your own demons off your chest, not just like making up a storybook to sing about, you know. So we all wrote lyrics, and we all wrote about experiences that we've all personally been through in life that were hard experiences. And you know, and we wrote music that we enjoyed. You know what I mean? We didn't care if anybody else thought it was cool or not. We just wanted to write music that we would want to listen to. So that's what we did. And that record came out, and like, ever since that record came out, the band's like almost tripled in size. Seriously. Yeah, it's crazy.
Such an iconic record. And I mean, there are albums like The Root of All Evil by Spite. There are albums by Traders, more recently by Paleface or Orphan, because good God, that album was so fucking good. And again, to be talking with someone who was involved with the final touches of that record, mixing it master, just
the Orphan record,
my fucking mind.
I actually so they self-recorded that. They had never recorded anything ever in their lives. So I was there, you know, on Zoom calls with them, showing them like little tips and tricks and stuff like that. I helped walk them through the entire process of that record. Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, it's now no surprise to me that the record ended up being as good as it was, because especially if they're getting tips and tricks from someone like yourself, it's like, oh, okay. And then just literally music that can only be defined as concentrated pain, concentrated hate. But
they're so good at using their vocals in a way that just makes you feel like any type of like they do things, you know, you hear a lot of the parts with no vocals on it, and a lot of people would hear it and not imagine what it is, you know what I mean? But like, when you hear it with vocals on it, you're like, oh my God,
it's a whole different animal. It's like going from a little bunny to the freaking the black jackalope from The Witch, just hanging out in the woods with the red eyes, and you're like, what the fuck you doing in there? And just like you know, kind of hanging out there, not even making any sound. It's just there, but it's like so intimidating, even though it's such a small creature. It's the same thing. But like,
speaking of the word creature, just reminded me, I also worked on that Infant Annihilator record, The Egg.
Ooh. Oh, really?
Yeah, that was one of the last things me and the old guy did together.
Wow. No, that's crazy. Give me a second. I'm trying to process that.
Dickie lives here in same city as me. So same
there
thing.
you
Like
go.
all the dudes and traders used to live here. It's so weird because we live in a small town that doesn't have shows, but all of our bands have done well.
Yeah, for real. And I've heard because of a previous podcast episode with a guy named by the name of Derek Connolly of what is currently festering in the band Nithful, basically the more satanic incarnation of Infant Annihilator. He told me a whole bunch of stories of the Legends, the Legends venue or bar or club or whatever that was.
Yeah, they were open for a couple of years.
Yeah, and he told me a whole bunch of stories of like how he saw Bodysnatcher, Traders, Infant Annihilator, or more or less Infant Annihilator, because they never played any live shows, did they?
They've never played a live show. No, they won't play a live show.
Yeah, I didn't think so. But all of those amazing bands, like he's telling me the stories of how they all started in humble little venues like that, and now they've just exploded, and he's hoping that Nithful becomes another one on the list. And I'm like,
I did his past two bands as well. He had a band, I forget what the first band was called, but I did I did that record.
That's cool. The fucking dude, it's like a cobweb now. It's becoming more and more of a cobweb. Just all the intersecting little points, all the points. It's crazy. But kind of full circling back to this Heavy Void and stuff. I gotta tell you, one of the most raw and just raw and honest, brutal, just right in your face records I think I've ever heard, whether because of the lyrical content or the instrumental, just like impact and stuff. It's another one of those albums that really says, this is how we feel. We're angry, we're pissed, but when we're off stage, we got, we switched that off. We're like, hey, come into the party, man. Like, and that's the vibe I love about Bodysnatcher, man, is that since the beginning, since The Death of Me, which Exterminate, The Death of Me featuring Darius, those were my two gateway singles with you guys. Cool. And I remember, it was so sick. So I've been on the train for quite a long time. And again, to now be hosting one of the members of the band, such an iconic band for the scene, I would say, it's really cool to like think back and, you experienced it yourself first person. Like the moment you mentioned Exterminate, I'm like, like time to watch, man. Because I remember it was specifically this Heavy Void tour that you guys did with Born Anew, Great American Ghost, and I think Strangled for a couple select dates.
Yeah, Strangled was on like 4 days.
Yeah.
And I think Distinguisher was on a couple days.
Distinguisher. Exactly. Yeah, I remember, dude.
How we met Strangled was we were on the Eternal Nightmare tour, the Chelsea Grin tour. With
That's right.
Yeah, so we were like Slaughter to Prevail and Enterprise Earth and us and Traders. And
such a massive show.
We had an off day in Texas, and one of my friends who was in this band called Aberrant Construct, who is Michael Soto, he plays guitar in Strangled, or played guitar in Strangled. He also plays guitar in a new band called Peeling Flesh, and they're fucking awesome.
He plays in Peeling Flesh?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck. Now I gotta check them out.
Yep. But so we had an off day, and Soto hit me up. He's like, yo, I got this new band Strangled. Like, let's just put a show together like on your off day. And we're like, all right, cool. So we went, and Strangled played, and I was just like jaw on the floor, like, what the fuck is this shit? And their singer was like, came up to me and was like, oh, dude, I saw you with King Conqueror. He's like, your vocalist is like what made me want to do vocals and all that shit.
That's cool, man.
And I was like, and he's this huge fucking dude. He's just like this huge, intimidating motherfucker. And I saw Strangled, and literally, I went up to Soto and Jacob after the show, and I was like, do you guys have like recordings done yet? And he's like, yeah, we just recorded everything. And I was like, I will mix it for free. Send it to me.
There you go. That's crazy, man. That's crazy.
So after that show, I was like, dude, we got to get you guys on. Like, I know you can't like tour, but like, please do like 5 days. And they're like, all right. And so they opened the show for like 5 days or 4 days.
That's sick. I really wish I got the opportunity. I mean, obviously, I think sometime in the future, because it's Strangled is now Orphan, and now with the Porcelain album out, I do get the vibe that they might be looking into touring plans.
Yeah, they might tour, and Peeling Flesh is the drummer and guitar player of Strangled. So that band is also, I mean, the slam and musical aspect of Strangled is definitely Peeling Flesh now, and I think that band's going to start touring as well.
No, that's going to be awesome, and guaranteed the first time Orphan comes through town, I will be fucking attending that. But I definitely wanted to take a look back because, like, I remember I attended one of the shows. This was the Nile Theater show for this Heavy Void tour, and dude, I remember that's the only band that I had such an adrenaline rush from moshing that someone roundhoused me in the gut, roundhoused me in the face, and I felt nothing. I felt nothing. I just kept on running around. I kept on swinging my scraggly little white arms around, and then when somebody roundhoused me in the nads, that's when I keeled over and I had to take a break. But other than that, it was go time. It was murder music time. And that
tour was like such a surprise for us because it was like the first time we'd headlined in a long time, and that tour ended up just like it crushed. It was so good. Like every night was so fucking awesome. So you were at Nile Underground?
Nile Theater or Nile. I think it was the Nile Theater that time, but I'm not sure. Or maybe it could have even been Club Red.
Because it was Club Red.
It was Club Red. Yeah.
I love that venue. Crap. That place closed down.
I was down.
what a good venue. And the guy that ran sound there was so good. I loved that guy. I actually got his phone number to see if he would run sound for us in the future if we ever hired a sound guy.
There you go.
But that venue was so good. I remember that night. Funny story. That day we were like, oh, let's try and eat vegetarian for this tour, just for the hell of it. So like we went to that KFC in the parking lot, and we got like we got like mashed potatoes and corn and stuff, and our bass player was like farting the loudest fucking farts in the world that night. It was so funny.
Oh, that's fucking great. No, I miss Club Red so much. And because like I'm in Tennessee now, and basically up until next spring I'm gonna be here, so I'm gonna be hanging out in what is the true South, whereas Arizona is the Southwest. But I am flying out there on the 12th, which should be cool for my sister's 16th birthday, bless her soul. Which that should be dope, and we're gonna be doing a lot of cool stuff. We're gonna go see Thor. It's gonna be a great time. But yeah, I definitely remember that night how sweaty I was, and I remember that I bought a ticket for one of my homies who should not be named for that reason, and like halfway through the show he left, man. I'm like, what the fuck, you're gonna miss Bodysnatcher, dude. But that same homie now has a because of the I'm not even sure if it was a tour you guys did with Left to Suffer, Boundaries, and Mouth for War recently.
Yeah, that was the last headliner that we did like last October, November.
Yes. And that is when I saw you guys at the Nile Underground, but I was actually sleep deprived and I had work the following morning. So like basically as soon as Left to Suffer was done, I'm like, you know what? I want to stay for Bodysnatcher, but I need to go get some sleep or I'm actually going to go insane. So I went home, but I did buy him it's like the logo with the crossing knives and shit. I got him one of those flags and he's like, thank you so much. And like,
dude, that show was like, that was one of the funnest shows I think we've ever played. And it was so ridiculously hot, you know what I mean? But it was still like one of the best shows ever. And yeah, Mesa's a pretty rough not like rough in that aspect, like mentally for me, because Brandon that lived there that passed this year.
Brandon.
I forget his last name. Long hair, glasses. He was like at every hardcore show ever. But
I don't know.
Anyways,
I'm familiar with that name.
He's a kid from Mesa who passed this year, and he was at every single King Conquer show, every Bodysnatcher show.
Shit.
And my uncle is also from Phoenix, and he passed this last year too. So it's like,
I'm sorry to hear.
It's a pretty every time we go to Mesa, I'm just like, fuck.
Yeah,
but it's always a really, really, really good show.
Yeah,
every time it's so good.
And one thing I will say as far as AZ is that they really got a good music scene. Because I mean, fuck, that's where Job for a Cowboy came from.
Nice,
Not
the
Phoenix.
Abyss.
Yeah, not Phoenix specifically, but they came from Glendale, which is actually where another one of my buddies lives currently. So every time I think about him, I think of Job for Cowboy, vice versa.
Mhm.
But you know, Arizona, Phoenix is also where Lincoln Park came from. It's where Dead came from. If you're aware of them, they're kind of like a new
DED.
Yeah, DED.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, I know them.
Yeah. So like they came from Arizona, and then we got some freaking diamonds in the rough making their way up the ladder. We got Redstone Crown, we got the Exiled Martyr, which that's a pretty solid one. And they're currently looking for a new vocalist actually. But yeah,
Wasn't
like
there was a band that was from there that played the Club Red show. Fuck, what is their name? They show up on like Spotify randomly.
I'm not sure.
Starts with a D, I think.
A D. I don't think it's Decayer.
Yeah, it was Decayer because their singer was from there, but I don't think they have that singer anymore.
I think they actually still do. And yeah, Decayer is definitely another AZ local. Smile on the Sinner is another one, but yeah, Decayer, that's one of them. And they're definitely rising to the top. Like they're making fucking moves right now. I don't follow them, but I know they're making moves because they're almost at least 2 or 3 days a week they are on my Facebook feed. So that's something.
Yeah, for sure.
Like they're definitely making moves. And then Smile on the Sinner is another one. Smile the Sitter, there's Apocalypse Pony too, which Apocalypse Pony is dope as shit. Like yeah, so many bands in the local AZ and just like the Phoenix AZ scene. Then you got Celestial Exile, you got all these bands coming in from Yuma and Tucson and Flagstaff and Anthem. I'm like, holy shit, like calm down, people. But at the same time, I welcome it with open arms because I mean, we got plenty of bangers here in Tennessee too. Not that I was born and raised here, but I'm like incredibly proud to now be living here in Tennessee because we got fucking Whitechapel. We got Orthodox, baby.
Yeah.
But like so many, it's either LA, it's Florida, which I mean, apparently
Florida as a whole just has so many heavy bands.
So many fucking bands. It's not even funny.
Yeah.
And Tennessee has a couple good ones, but definitely like LA I've seen recently, and Florida just keeps on bringing them over and over again. It's like, hey,
Texas too. Texas has a lot of really good bands. I Am, Kubicon.
That's true. Yeah.
There's a band from there that's coming out right now called Life Cycles. Dude, the band's fucking sick.
Sorrow Eater and Hunt the Dinosaur. Shout out to them.
Yeah.
The boys. No, it's sick. But yeah, like so many. Like,
where in Tennessee are you?
Middle Tennessee. I'm currently in Murfreesboro, which is maybe an hour drive from Nashville. So
cool.
But I mean, yeah, I've been to Knoxville now. Almost got stranded there because I lost the keys that I brought with me, so that was fucked. And that was my first time seeing the homies in Warm Shepherd in the Breathing Process. Big shout out to them because like they are basically that little corner of the music scene, just like the blackened death metal, the blackened deathcore that happens to not be Lorna Shore. That's kind of like the little corner that I seem to be diving headfirst into with bands like Nithful, Warm Shepherd, Shrine, even, which like they're really quiet right now, but they're about to make a comeback for sure.
Have you heard Casket Maker?
Casket Maker, yeah.
I did their album too.
You did their album? What the fuck? Okay. Jesus Christ, that's amazing. No, that's really cool. And I definitely need to get them on the podcast here pretty soon. Shout out to them if they ever happen to listen to this. But with all of that lore, all of that story in mind, like what we've discussed so far, I mean, you went from let's see, Evil Existence to Horror Story, to let's see, King Conquer, basically, and now to Bodysnatcher.
Yeah, I sang in a band called Lost Fortune for a while too.
Lost Fortune.
Okay. Lost Fortune, yeah, and that band was doing really good actually. Just like right off the rip, we first show that we ever played, we headlined, and that band was crushing. And then yeah, and I don't know, we just the drummer didn't really work out
Oof.
and then I started doing the Bodysnatcher thing, and once I joined Bodysnatcher, it's just like everything
Yeah.
was
Everything came together. I can only imagine.
nothing else was like, you know, I wasn't
Debate.
putting my effort into anything else besides Bodysnatcher.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that is naturally just the way that things go sometimes. Like that was the most brain dead way of saying it, but just shit happens for a reason. You go from even pretty iconic projects like King Conquer, and you know, that's, I think really that's where most people know you from.
Yeah,
is because, like, you know, there's Traders, the Anger Issues EP, and I remember your name being the feature on that, and I'm like, wait, isn't that the drummer for Bodysnatcher? And there's like Chris Whited of King Conquer, and I'm like, wait, what the fuck is King Conquer? And I'm like, oh, he used to be in another band. Okay,
yeah, because they were all, I mean, they were, Tyler Shelton was like the biggest King Conquer fanboy back in the day when he was younger. Oh yeah.
Wow. No, that's cool. And I mean, stuff like that is really, really how I understood and got to know a good number of people. Like, not know people, but I was aware of them, and I'm like, I want to be like them someday.
Yeah.
And you know, now we're crawling closer and closer to that point, I would say. But kind of wanted to ask a couple questions then, with all of that in mind. During the beginning of the process, when you were getting 1776 recording started, what was like the main drive behind just wanting to get started? Because I know you started with a friend who shall not be named, but was there like what was the main thing that was going on in your brain? Just like, you know what, fuck it, let's get this started, let's get this shot up, because like this
well,
what felt good about it?
So when I always like was interested in it when King Conquer was recording albums. It was just like I just loved being in like at the studio, or you know, and weren't even, King Conquer recorded at, you know, a studio that was built out of somebody's house, you know, and it was like, I was like, damn, I was like, I could do that, you know. And now with technology nowadays, like you don't have to have $1 million studio to make $1 million records, you know. And so first I started with, you know, when I first recorded drums, there's like a couple edits that they made that made it slightly different than what I actually played, and I was like, damn, they did that wrong. But I didn't know that I could tell them to redo it, you know. And so when I was like, I'm gonna start learning how to like record myself playing drums, just that. And so I learned how to like track stuff and edit things before I learned how to mix things. And because I learned that like so thoroughly, the kid that I ended up running a studio with, he wasn't as good at editing and tracking as I was. So I took on all the tracking and editing aspects of things, and he was mixing. And then I was doing a bunch of the mix. I was doing a bunch of like my own projects by myself as well at the time, with me mixing. And it was just something that like I became absolutely obsessed with. And like when I start to like something, I'm a very obsessive person when I start to enjoy something. So like I just like overdo it a lot, and so like I really dove head first and just started doing everything. Give me 1 second. Let me go let my dog out. He's whining at the door. Hold on
no problem. You're good. All
right. So yeah, I just like, you know, it was something that I just genuinely loved. And then I started like fully producing records with bands. So like I was like, you know, helping in the writing process with people while they're in the studio, and like telling them, oh, hey, like we should do this in this transition from this part to this part instead. You know what I mean? Just like seeing people's minds go like, holy shit, I would have never thought of that. You know what I mean? Like that feeling right there is like the best thing ever to me. You know what I mean? Like when you come up with an idea and you show it to somebody and they listen back and they're just like, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's so sick.
It's fulfilling.
So I just became obsessed with that feeling and getting things like that to happen. And so then, you know, when all the shit happened with me and the other dude, and I had to start back from nothing. I mean, if it wasn't for King Conquer, I would have never been able to go full time as quick as I did.
Right.
And, I was playing in that cover band, and then me and the other kid's studio was like crushing. So I was like 2 years of not having a job besides recording. That was it. All I did was record, ran everything out of my house, and I was making, more money than I've ever made. And our prices were cheaper than most people. And we were just so booked that we were making good money. And all that shit happened. I had to start back from scratch and think fucking whatever exists that I had any type of imprint in the scene, because without that imprint in the scene, there's no way I would have gotten the amount of work that I still have,
Exactly. Yeah.
And now that Bodysnatcher has done well, and like, I did the re-release of Death of Me, and then that started getting me more work, and then fully did This Heavy Void, and that started getting me more work, and then did the Traders Repent album, and did like all their newest singles and stuff like that, and then and just tons of stuff in between that people liked. Like, even if it was smaller bands, if people think it sounds good, they're gonna want to hit you up and work with you.
Exactly.
So everything that I work on, I try and make it as best as I can. Sometimes you work with bands and like, you can't tell somebody, that a song isn't good. You have to
work with it the best you can.
You have to work with it the best you can and make it the best you can. And you just, as long as I do that and I try and make everything as best as possible, no matter what, people are going to hear it and think, a lot of people are going to think it sounds good. Some people don't, some people don't like my mixes, but that's just little elitist kids in the scene that think they know everything. But you can't please everybody, but thankfully I've been able to please most people I've worked with, and I've had tons and tons of returning customers. So most of the time when I work with a band, they end up coming back, and so it's really helped me. I've always tried to under promise, over deliver. So like, basically in a sense of like, if a band asks me when a song or when their album's going to be finished, I'll give them a date, and I always try and have it finished and sent to them well before that date,
right?
That way it's like a surprise to them, and they're appreciative that it got done before the date. And just good. I got really into marketing, and I mean, I'm not like a fucking marketing genius by any means, but I've tried to learn everything that I can that would benefit me and the things that I do, and then I roll those marketing skills into Bodysnatcher, and everything's just a big circle of me just trying really hard all the time. It's not like I didn't graduate high school. I didn't go to college. I'm not like the smartest person in the world, but I definitely,
you got your instincts.
I definitely put a lot of effort into everything that I do.
Right. And I mean, I can definitely see the marketing mindset and stuff kind of flowing through, because even now, I personally am trying to do that same thing. I'm trying to always think with a marketing mindset, because at the end of the day, no matter what you're making, and especially when you are a creative individual, whether a musician, a painter, you can be an OnlyFans creator, you got to be able to market and promote your product well, because if you're wanting to make money off of that and sooner or later get away from the 9-to-5 average American dream lifestyle, that's what you got to do. You got to have something that you're almost obsessed with, if not obsessed with.
You have to become, you have to become obsessed. The only way to make money, like, you can have a normal job and you can make enough money to live, but then you're just making enough money to live.
Yeah.
You will never be more than what you currently are without making some type of gamble. You know what I mean? You won't, like, you have to put money into things to make more money.
You have to invest.
There's no other way around it. You can work at the grocery store all you want for as long as you want, but you're still going to be working at the grocery store for your entire life, and But also at the same time, sometimes I'm like, damn, my life would be a lot easier if I just had a regular job, because dude, sometimes I don't make any money. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I have months where I don't have any work and I'm like, fuck, how the fuck do I pay my bills?
Right.
It's a I don't have job security. You know what I mean? Any day, you know what I mean? I could just be not relevant anymore. And you know what I mean? There's new producers and new recording engineers coming out every day that are all really awesome. They're all, a lot of people are really good now.
Yeah.
And it's definitely hard to keep up, but you just have to keep trying. Same thing with being in a band. I would say less than 1% of the world knows what it's like to be a touring musician.
I know. I sure as hell don't.
That's a very, very small percentage. And not only is it that small of a percentage for people that know what it's like to tour, then that percentage gets a million times smaller to be able to make money off doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I toured for most of my life without making any type of profit, Luckily we're doing fairly well now and we can go on tour and come home with some money, but we can't just do a support tour where we're second on the bill. Like we just did that tour with Dying Fetus and tours like that, great tours, huge crowds, but you're not making more money on those tours because you're also getting paid way less every night on those tours. You know what I mean? So if you're headlining the tour, you're making a bunch of money. Like granted, merch sales are great and stuff like that. But we can't just do two tours a year and be able to pay our bills for a year. It doesn't work like that. We have to keep working in between tours and hoping that we make enough money, hoping that everybody else in the band, they have to keep hoping that their jobs will hire them back. Kyle Carter hasn't had a job all year. He's been barely scraping by, but it's like, you get a job right now, we go on tour in 2 weeks. We go on tour. That tour is 3 weeks long, and then we're home for fucking 4 weeks, and we go back on tour again. And then we're home for 4 days, and we go back on tour again. And then we're home for 2 months, and then we go back on tour again. So it's like
I can't even imagine. Not yet.
Finding a job that will let you do that is really, really, really hard.
Yeah. So it's more or less like, and this is how I've understood it so far, without even being an official band, without being an instrumentalist, a vocalist, or anything, even a freaking drum tech, which our last guest, Parker Yowell of the Archaic Epidemic, drum tech for Suffocation and multiple bands starting out. Basically, unless if you happen to be one of those people that are legitimately a walking, moving, talking resource for any and all legitimate and always mandatory spectrums of music business, it's like you're never really guaranteed any pay. And even then,
I mean, you could definitely get a job for a company being a stagehand or a drum tech or something like that, or a driver. But it's like, and to me, like, I don't want to fucking do that. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Then I have to be on tour. I have to literally be on tour and not play music. Fuck that.
Exactly. And I can only imagine that.
Being on tour, like, having like family and a relationship and owning a house is already one of the hardest things anyone could ever imagine doing. You know what I mean? You leave your significant other for fucking 3 months. Like most people, good fucking luck. You know what I mean? Like doesn't fucking work, pal.
It's kind of like the army, except it's absolutely optional.
Exactly. That's why it's harder. You know what I mean? Like, so, I mean, I am extremely fortunate. I have a significant other that is just like the most supportive and energetic and just like positive person in the world.
Yeah.
But 9 times out of 10, it's not fucking like that. You know what I mean? A lot of people, they can handle a couple weeks, you know what I mean? But like in our instance, coming up, dude, we leave October 20th and we come back December 20th.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's a long fucking time. You're missing every holiday, you're missing birthdays, you're missing fucking everything,
Yeah.
So it's hard.
But at the very least, you're not killing people for a living. You're just encouraging people to push and pull in the
Very true. Very true.
Which like that's
give me one more second. I gotta let my dog back in.
Yeah, you're good.
Sorry.
You're good. All right, so we're back for probably what will be the final section of the anatomy podcast, because literally I have no idea how long we've been going. All I know is we've been going for an hour and 11 minutes, and we've just been talking about just shop. We've just been talking this shit. I like it though. So you were saying though, you were just talking about touring, right? Just all that fun stuff.
Basically it's it's a lot. It's not just daisies and roses. It's a lot harder than people think. A lot of people go on one tour and they're like, nope, not for me.
Yeah,
that's why you see a lot of bands go through members. The tour is the reason why members quit.
Right.
People are like, oh, I can't believe that guy left the band. Like, dude, you don't know what he fucking went through.
Yeah. And that's the thing that most people will absolutely never understand, whether they're listeners or people who just really like. And it's strange because I know so many of them too in my immediate life. They're like, I don't really listen to music. I'm like, wait, what?
We listen to music, but we don't listen to metal on tour at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Sometimes we do. I listen to if I'm driving, I listen to A Day to Remember, Goes Inside or something.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, absolutely. It's creative pollution. I completely get that. People are like, especially the listeners, and me being one myself until further notice, it's like you listen to these bands and you're like, oh, they must be listening to the same type of music all the time. The way they're always in the game. I'm like, no, they don't. Like Chelsea Grin, they don't listen to metal at all on tour. Shrine of Malice, which is another one I love, they don't really listen to metal because they don't want it to cause creative pollution. But at the same time, when you're on the clock, and this is another conversation me and Parker Yowell of the Archaic Epidemic primarily had, as well as Parkolepsy Productions in the last episode, it's like when you're on the clock, you don't really want to be doing when you're on the clock, you participate in the craft, you hone in, you focus, you obsess per se, like a mad scientist, and you dissect the anatomy of what you're planning to do per the name, the anatomy podcast. That's what we talk about on here. But the moment you're off the fucking clock, especially after you've done it for so long, you're like, I'm going to push all that away. Like, I want to do something.
In a sense, it's I don't know, being in a band and running a studio, it's never not on my mind.
Oh, yeah.
I'd say, I don't know, I literally have 9,000 things in my mind at one time, all times, you know what I mean? Just remembering to do things constantly. Like, people don't realize, being at the stage of a local band or a band that's first starting out touring, you got to think about getting merch. You got to think about how much gas money you're gonna spend. All that stuff's that's just the start of it. You know what I mean? Like where we're at now, I get calls from our manager 5 times a day, every single day. You know what I mean? About different things. We have to. It's another thing, people don't realize that we don't get to pick where we play. You know what I mean? We're told where we're playing, when to show up, and that's what we do. We don't get to go, hey guys, we haven't played this little town in West Virginia in a really long time. We should probably play there. That's not an option.
Right.
So a lot of when people see oh, I can't believe you guys aren't hitting this city on that tour. But one, we don't get to pick. So I wish we did,
Yeah.
Two, most of the time, if it's a major city, we're not hitting that city because there's something else that we haven't been allowed to share with you yet that we are playing there. You know what I mean? But we just can't tell you yet.
Yeah.
So not most of the time that's the case. Most of the time people are, oh, I can't believe you're not hitting this city. But that's because what you don't know is that we have tours booked a year and a half out right now. You know what I mean? Like we can't talk about any of it. Everyone knows we're doing the Alpha Wolf tour. We're going to Europe with Chelsea Grin, Carnifex. Nobody knows what's in between those tours. Nobody knows what's after those tours. And there's a lot. You know what I mean? There's we literally have tours lined up until after this time next year. You know? So and you're not, if you're on a tour, you can't play a city within a 90-mile radius within 60 days of playing somewhere within that 90-mile radius. You know what I mean? So you're not like, we can't just play Bradenton, Florida, and then play Tampa the next day. It doesn't, you're not allowed to. It's there's like a radius clause. You can't do that. And
interesting.
So basically, if you have another tour booked and you're playing a city that's near these other cities, you're not allowed to. That's why some tours are like small towns and not a lot of dates, because there's another tour booked after that where we're hitting a bunch of the major cities around that.
Oh.
You know? But you can't tell people like, oh, just wait a couple weeks and we're going to be announcing something else, you know?
Yeah. It's like kind of the hey, and you know.
Yeah. Yeah. We are announcing something really soon though, that it's like by far the biggest tour we've ever done. We're not live.
Oh shit. Okay, yeah. Cool. Well, definitely yeah, people keep an eye out for that. But you know, also don't say anything. Don't say anything. So as we're beginning to wrap up this session, in which absolutely has been an honor, probably one of the biggest people that we've had on the podcast, period. I kind of wanted to review on like some creative aspects, some things that you've kind of bounced across like throughout your whole career. Because we've been talking about 1776 recordings, all of the albums and EPs that you have now mixed and mastered for other bands upon that name. But yet there's also an album by King Conquer that was released in 2013 called 17176. Is that where you got the name?
Yep.
Sick. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I was gonna name the studio 6 Gallon Studios. Because that we had a song called 6 Gallon Gasoline Stomach that was like our biggest song.
Okay.
And so it was between two choices, and I put a poll up on Facebook and everyone chose 1776 recordings. So
that works. Yeah,
that's what I chose. Yeah,
it has a ring to it, because when you think of 1776, you think gritty, you think colonial, you think well, not exactly progressive back then politically, or something like that.
Yeah.
This, you know,
that's why like lately I've been like, damn, maybe I should have changed the name of the studio. but no, I think it's like, you know, it's just like, it's a thing that's more than just, you know, old American times.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like
it's you know, King Conquer was a very political band, and that's why we had that album named 1776. And you know, back then, political views, you know, we were extremely against the government and what it was doing. That was King Conquer's whole thing. Right. You know, with us and Molotov Solution, we're very similar bands as far as lyrical content. Shit. You know, so back then we were very against what the country was, but still like for the Constitution in a sense.
Yes.
And but yeah, so that's where 1776 recordings came from, was the album name from King Conquer, and it's just like it attached to me as like a name so people would know it in a sense, you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. And there's that question knocked out of the park. Like, that definitely connected for me, and I'm glad I at least have the IQ to acknowledge and recognize something like that. Just like, oh, there was an album called 1776. Oh, just like looking over. But I wanted to ask you about like what ended up getting you into vocals, because you know, it's not like, for people who, you know, don't understand or don't know, it's not like you have your own band in which, you know, you're the primary vocalist. But honestly, I prefer that, you know, you're one vocalist among many in Bodysnatcher and King Conquer. And I have yet to listen to the discography of King Conquer. I feel stupid
I did vocals in that band too.
Okay. Yeah. Felt like such an awkward, silly question. Just like, was Bodysnatcher where you started, or like? But with that in mind, it's like, what ended up getting you into vocals? Because obviously you're already a drummer and you already just chop shop, bro. That's what you do. Yeah. So what ended up getting you into wanting to do vocals for both King Conquer then and Bodysnatcher?
Not necessarily any drummers that did vocals wanted me to. I just wanted to do vocals because I liked hardcore bands. Yeah. And I was like, well, if we're gonna be a deathcore band, we gotta have like hardcore parts. And my vocalist was like a super low vocalist. He couldn't do like hardcore vocals, and I could, because my favorite bands were old bands like Until the End and Remembering Never, and those were like two bands, same vocalist in both those bands, but like I really loved that dude's vocals. And so I, when I was younger, I practiced vocals doing hardcore vocals, and so I was like, well, if we're gonna have hardcore parts, like I should probably do the vocals on the hardcore parts.
I think that worked out pretty well.
And then that's how it all started,
Yeah, no, I think it's really iconic, and I don't think there's anybody else in the scene, specifically our modern deathcore scene, that has the type of vocals that you do when it comes to implementing that into deathcore the way you do. Like I hear Bodysnatcher, I'm like, okay, so there's Medina.
Medina definitely has a really good hardcore vocal too.
Oh, definitely.
And but the only reason I started doing it in Bodysnatcher was because King Conqueror was one of Medina's favorite bands, and he's like, dude, like when I said I'd be in the band, he was like, no fucking way. And I was like, yeah, I'll fucking do it. And he's like, fuck you, dude. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, holy shit.
No, that's dope. That's cool.
So he loved King Conqueror, and he loved like when I did vocals on the hardcore parts. He's like, dude, we should do that in Bodysnatcher now. And I was like, all right, fuck it, I'm used to it.
It's sick. I'm all about it, man. It's one of the main elements that I'm trying to implement into my band project Blind Without Our Failures, which is a mouthful. So for those in the future who get affiliated with the band, if you want to, just call Blind. I don't care. Like I don't mind really. But bands like Bodysnatcher, bands like Chelsea Grin, While She Sleeps is another good example. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but like literally the more vocalists, the better. That's kind of my mindset. And then on top of that, I'm trying to get like female vocals involved because it's supposed to be very haunting, very creepy, like make them suffer. So like when I was listening to bands like Bodysnatcher, let's see, Chelsea Grin, Angel Maker, which at first I didn't know it was two vocalists. I'm like, how the fuck is this one guy? And then I watched the music videos. I'm like, oh, it isn't. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. It's a lot more realistic. So there are bands like Angel Maker, Chelsea Grin, Bodysnatcher, While She Sleeps, and so many others that just had multiple vocalists. And I'm like, you know what? For the sake of variety, for the sake of perspective, and for the sake of complexity to the band itself, I'm like, I want to do this with my band someday. And hopefully that's exactly what I'm doing, but we'll see. Like, because it's just so much more, to me, it's so much better. And it also diverts the band away from the frontman syndrome bullshit, if you know what I'm talking about. Because like, I think one thing among many that I think of when I think of Bodysnatcher now is, for one, 3 Kyles, 1 Chris, which is a joke that I made on a previous episode.
Yeah.
So you got 3 Kyles, 1 Chris. There's it's a 3 vocalist project because of Carter's contributions to both This Heavy Void and Bleed Abide, which I think Carter is another sick vocalist too. And a part of me kind of wants to hear Shope in the future, but that's just me.
I would like to hear Shope in the future as well. I've been really wanting Shope to start doing vocals live so that we can like have him and Carter do like the crowd chant parts. You know
exactly. I mean? Bounce back and forth. Oh, that'd be so sick. That would be the fucking cherry on top. So yeah, here's someone else that wants to see that. Shope, please.
Yeah,
eventually. But like, I think of there are multiple vocalists, there are never any solos, and the lyrical content is always super intense.
Yeah,
and that's what always brings me back. And specifically with Bleed Abide, I think it brought everything to the table that it could have ever for Bodysnatcher and a little bit more. And that's what I enjoyed so much about it. That, and for the first time, y'all had what I've been in the scene to visualize, to observe, an actual like kind of deathcore album cover, if that makes sense. Like the kind of,
we actually had like an actual artist paint it from scratch, actually. Which last couple were Photoshop type artwork, and this one we actually spent a bunch of money and had to paint the exact thing. So basically, like the whole like Bleed Abide of the album is basically like saying, everyone goes through hard times, but it's okay to like see the bright side out of those hard times. And that's what most of the lyrical content on the record is about. It's like every song that's about something really hard that went through, by the end of the song, the lyrics are going into like how it's okay to be okay, basically.
Yeah.
Like, and so basically, if you look at the record, it's the mountain, but the mountain kind of goes like up top. Yes. And on this side is like everything is burnt over, and there's a triangle on fire, and on this side of the mountain everything's green, and there's a rose that's alive on that side. So that was the whole concept that we wanted to get out of the art, was like, this part is dark and gloomy and abandoned, and this part there's life on.
No, that's great. That's amazing. And I have to say, it's also very it's very fulfilling to have someone as big as Bodysnatcher, someone from that band, and basically, no offense to any of the bands before, but like it's nice to have complexity and actual meaning in the art that you're doing, because after all, you're spending $250 sometimes in the art. Like, kind of think of the story behind that. Yeah, exactly, way more than that. Exactly.
I think we spent like $4,000.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
But it was completely painted from scratch on like a 4-foot wide canvas, and we actually own that canvas of like the hard painting. Yeah.
Wow. No, that's crazy.
So basically, when you open up the CD booklet, like you see the front cover and you open it up, and there's like a back portion of it, because the whole thing is like super wide. And so yeah, that's what the guy actually painted by hand. Yeah.
That's really cool.
And we literally just gave him the idea. Like, we told him like, hey, we kind of like want the kid from This Heavy Void. Actually, This Heavy Void was hand drawn.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was hand drawn digitally.
Oh.
But it was hand drawn with a pen. But we actually have a time lapse of how that one was made. But we wanted the kid from This Heavy Void, like in the hood, to be sitting on top of a mountain, and we gave him the idea of like having, one side apocalyptic and one side have life on it, basically.
Yeah.
And the guy did the painting, and he sent us back like the initial sketch of it, and we're like, damn, dude, you fucking nailed it.
Yeah, it looks great. And I was really excited to see that album cover when you guys first unveiled it after EDA. I'm like, holy fuck, they got a new album coming out, and they actually got a deathcore album cover. We're in for a treat, baby.
Yeah, because like over COVID, we were just putting out singles, and people thought all those singles were going to be part of a record. But if you listen to them all,
me too.
If you listen to them all, every song had a different mix. You know what I mean? So we would just record a song, mix it, put it out, or film a music video, put it out, because we didn't know when we were going to be able to start touring again. And we had just signed to Monarch, and I was like, dude, can we like just put out a bunch of singles that aren't part of the record, and just to like keep the band kind of growing in a sense.
Yeah, keep people interested too.
And actually, we grew more over COVID than we had, over the 2 years prior to that.
Right.
Because of the fact that we just kept putting out music videos and putting out songs. And none of those songs are on the record besides Absolved with the Strings of Stone.
Strings of Stone.
Yeah. So that was the only song. We put that song out, the record. So the record was actually done a year ago. We actually had the finals sent in a year ago. But we had to wait this long because vinyl was taking so long. And so we put the order for the vinyls in last August. And they just started shipping this week.
This week?
Yep.
Holy shit.
All the vinyls that got ordered for our album didn't count towards our first week's sales because they didn't get the gift shipped.
Fuck. That sucks, man.
Yeah, it really sucks. But I mean, whatever. It doesn't really fucking matter. Who cares? I don't give a fuck.
At the end of the day, you got the album out to plenty of people.
Yeah, people still heard the record. Our Spotify numbers really grew, and you know, our Spotify numbers have stayed high, which is great. A lot of bands put out records and their Spotify numbers drop back down, but ours has stayed pretty close to 200. It's been like right under 200 or something.
Yeah. And speaking specifically on Spotify stats, because I always like doing this during session. Usually I do it at the beginning, but then you mentioned it. So good time. Currently, we got Behind the Crowd at 677,000 streams. We got King of the Rats at 2 million streams. Take Me to Hell at 1 mil. Black of My Eyes almost at 3 mil, actually. Wired for Destruction at almost 300,000 streams. Like, the proof is in the pudding, people. Like, the really solid band, and this album too, it's doing really good. When it comes to like announcing 1 million streams, is that like collectively among all the tracks, or just every track has 1 million streams?
So if you look at, oh, that's what you were just reading is per track.
Just
the individual track. Yeah. So I think right now Bleed Abide has, I think, close to 3 million streams total for the record.
Shit.
So that's you know, we're extremely happy with that.
Yeah. And I mean,
and the fact that you know, a lot of times you put out a new record and like, yeah, some of the songs off that record will be in like the most played on Spotify for the band for a little while, and then they drop back off, and then older songs take that position again. But we've had a couple songs stick in that like top 5 rotation played, which is really good.
Yeah. And I mean, definitely my favorite so far is among these, of course, that being Behind the Crowd, because I think Behind the Crowd, both visually with the music video and audially, there you go, I think it really captured the in the pit with the crowd moment that is deathcore, like the whole hardcore vibe. That's what I meant.
Yes.
And that's what I love so much about it, just like the roaring back and forth, and especially in the music video, just Kyle doing that back and forth, Medina doing that back and forth. I'm like, this is the shit I live for, man.
Yeah.
And
we're putting out one more video on the album. One more video for a song on the album pretty soon. And but it's a video that's all actor based. And so it's like basically a movie. It looks so sick.
Sweet.
But yeah, it's for Value Through Suffering.
Value Through Suffering. Okay. And I mean, that's on a 13-track record, which I also really appreciated about this record. I mean, that's only halfway through, people. So I mean, we're still getting some treats from Bodysnatcher. We're still getting some stuff off of Bleed Abide. I mean, what can I say, people? I really love this record. I've loved all of their records so far. This Heavy Void and The Death of Me really getting me into them, especially with the Darius Tarani feature on The Death of Me. I'm like, holy shit, it's Darius from Spite. What's up with his hair? But it's also Darius from Spite. At the time he had the sides of his head buzzed, and I'm like, wait, what? What's going on with that? But I mean, nonetheless, really solid opportunity we have had here today. It is currently 5:34 p.m. on the 30th of July. Again, people, we were joined today by Chris Whited, formerly of King Conquer, but now of 1776 Recordings and Bodysnatcher, their newest album, Bleed Abide, that came out this April, not this last April, that'd be last year. So this most recent April specifically, doing really good. And I think before we go, I actually had one more question for you. Have you been reached out to by Shibori at all? Shibori Threads?
I'm not sure, actually. I don't know if we have or not.
Right. Because a part of me, dude, I would really love to see a
we definitely would. Yeah, we definitely would do that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there you go, Kyle. There's a pretty, I would say that's a pretty awesome opportunity for y'all. Even him and
Medina chat quite a bit, I believe.
There you go. Yeah, that would be awesome. Well, hopefully we can see a Bodysnatcher Bleed Abide themed Shibori hoodie at some point in the future, because I know I would buy that in a fucking heartbeat.
That would be sick. Yeah.
That would be sick. But there's that. And I mean, honestly, is there anything else that you're wanting to plug before we decide to head out?
We got tour with Alpha Wolf coming up. We got another tour that's being announced right after that. And then we got Europe with Carnifex, Chelsea Grin, Burials. We got a couple more tours after that we're gonna announce, and we're currently writing.
There you go. That's awesome. Well, I do appreciate you spending as much time as you did, because basically we got more than an hour and a half of talk and conversation with the one and only, the fucking legendary Florida-born Chris Whited of 1776 Recordings, Bodysnatcher, formerly of King Conquer, Evil Existence, and plenty of other projects alongside his buddies, his family in the scene, the hardcore scene, the fucking strong Florida, freaking deep swamp, straight from the jaws of the alligator Florida scene. Like, it's always a chump. But really appreciated you stopping by today. Dude, massive honor to have you on the podcast and be talking with you. And folks, if you want, be sure to let us know. But I mean, honestly, either way, I'll probably do it anyways. We will be trying to host the other members of Bodysnatcher on the Anatomy podcast, that being Kyle, Shope, Carter, and Medina in the future. Please stay tuned for that. And otherwise, be sure to enjoy your evening.